Foundations for Responsible Food Marketing to Children. I'm Jessica Almy at the Center for Science and the Public Interest, and today we have three speakers. Tracy Fox is a registered dietitian and president of Food, Nutrition, and Policy Consultants, LLC, with over 25 years working in the federal government and the private sector. She works on a number of issues, including child nutrition and school health, and food labeling and marketing. Ariane Corbett is Managing Director of Leading Health, LLC. She is also a registered dietitian specializing in food and nutrition policy, health promotion, and advocacy. Her work includes efforts to improve the nutritional quality of foods in schools and also to reduce unhealthy food marketing aimed at children. Finally, Margot Rutan is the Director of Nutrition Policy at the Center for Science and the Public Interest. Dr. Rutan got her doctorate in nutrition from Harvard University's School of Public Health. She co-founded and coordinates the activities of the National Alliance for Nutrition and Activity, NANA, and the Food Marketing Work Group. We're really glad to have you here today. I need to advance the slide. There we go, thank you. So a few things about today. Oops. The webinar is being recorded. Make sure the audio tab on GoToWebinar control panel is set to the method you're using, either speakers on your computer or the telephone. Your line is muted, but you can ask questions in one of three ways. For clarifying questions, please use the chat box on the GoToWebinar control panel. Members of the Food Marketing Work Group are invited to a briefing after this webinar. Email Elizabeth Valentin at the address shown for information. And we'll have a tweet chat tomorrow from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow @CSPI and hashtag #MarketingToKids on Twitter to participate. Today we're going to talk about food marketing to kids, and there are a number of issues that come up when we're talking about the importance of food marketing to kids. And we're here at CSPI, and many other people on the phone are working in three areas for food marketing. One is to increase participation in self-regulation of food marketing to kids. One is to ensure stronger nutrition standards for foods that are marketed to children. And the third is to cover all marketing that children ages 14 and under see. And this project that we're going to be talking today deals with the third. I'm going to hand the mic over to Tracy, who's going to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everybody, and welcome. Glad you're able to participate today for the unveiling of the responsible food marketing definitions. I'll wait, Jessica. I might have you turn it if I don't have it yet. But like Jessica said, the three main areas that the advocacy efforts have been geared towards include encouraging more companies to join the Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative. And Jessica, I'm not able to slide them, so if you just want to advance one. And also strengthening the nutrition criteria that foods and beverages need to comply with in order to be marketed to kids. And then the third one, which is really the focus of the discussion today, is to expand marketing definitions to cover all food marketing to kids. So while there's been a lot of discussion about the nutrition criteria and the standards that foods and beverages had to meet, that was not the scope of the expert panel that I'll be talking about. The Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative companies came together and developed a set of uniform guidelines that were put in place last year. So the expert committee was really delving into and looking at the marketing definitions and how to expand the definition for what constitutes food marketing. Go ahead, you can turn to the next slide, please. So in terms of the big picture, in 2006, the Institute of Medicine recommendation really did call on taking a closer look at children's exposure to food marketing. And what we sought to do with the expert committee was really develop recommendations for food marketing to look at what constitutes a child audience, the range of food marketing practices aimed at children, and then specific food marketing strategies and techniques used to target children. And I do want to talk a second about the expert panel, which was comprised of 17 people, including Mary Story, the Director of Healthy Eating Research, which funded the project, as well as myself and Arian Corbett as co-chairs, and then an additional 14 people that really did represent. They're experts in the fields of nutrition and marketing and communications and policy and child obesity and media, a media company representative. So it really was a pretty diverse group of experts that we pulled together. And our recommendations were based in large part on a lot of the research that we looked at as part of the CFBAI initiative, as also part of what the Federal Trade Commission defines as marketing practices. They have some good ones. Some of their definitions and guidelines just weren't created as policy documents that we could easily use in terms of advocacy and working with companies to expand and strengthen their existing pledges regarding marketing. So that really did constitute kind of led us to the development of the expert recommendations that we'll be talking about. You can go to the next slide, please. So key recommendations and takeaways are really that children from birth to age through age 14 and including 14 should be protected from unhealthy food marketing. The current industry definition for child-directed marketing really doesn't protect children enough from the majority of marketing they see for unhealthy foods and beverages. And any marketing that's appealing to kids really should be child-directed regardless of whether or not it falls within the percentile that many companies use in terms of determining what's a child-directed platform or venue. And then brands marketed to children really should only contain healthy food. So we're going to dig into a number of these areas in a little more detail. Turn to the next slide. So in terms of looking at the definition for children, the current industry practice is, for the most part, children under the age of 12, so up through 11 are defined as children. And the expert panel recommendation the expert panel recommended that we expand that to include children up through and including the age of 14. And the research is pretty clear on this. 12 to 14-year-olds are exposed to more food and beverage ads than any other age group, an average of about 16 ads per day. They also spend a fair amount of time on media, 2 hours alone on the computer each day. 70% of 12 to 13-year-olds have access to the internet, and by targeting the 12 to 14-year-old, we're also going to be capturing more 9 to 11-year-olds who actually, no surprise here, watch a lot of the programming that is watched by tweens as well. So there's a lot of tween programming that's viewed by younger eyes. If any of you have siblings, I'm sure that would be no surprise to you at all. So the research is pretty clear on this, and it really does seem to be mounting as well. When it comes to child-directed advertising, the expert panel recommends that the threshold be lower to down to 25% or more of the expected audience being up through the age of 14, and this would really capture more programming viewed by kids. Right now, with the current industry definition of about 35% of the expected audience or more being children under the age of 12, that leaves out more than about half of the food and beverage ads that kids see. So ads seen during tween programming and holiday specials don't meet that target, but they're clearly child-directed, and those shows have a lot of 14 and under eyes on them. And Rudd did do an analysis looking at what would happen if you increase the age range to include up through 14 and then lowered the threshold to be 25% or more of the expected audience being in that range, and found that that would actually cover the majority of ads, about 70% of the ads, food and beverage ads that kids see, but it would also have limited impact on the ads viewed by an adult audience. So it seemed to be a nice mix. There was a lot of discussion in the panel as to whether or not the age should be increased, whether or not the threshold for percentage should be increased, and at the end of the day, we felt that the 25% and up through and including 14-year-olds would capture the majority of ads, especially those for foods and beverages, but not impact the child-directed programming as much. Next slide. Oh, now I think I can do it. Here we go. And so I just wanted to kind of show a few of the examples of, sorry, Jessica, it's not, there we go, of the of what is not considered child-directed at this point. So the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is just one of several shows, King of the Hill, Squidbillies, Robot Chicken. This means nothing to me because my kids are in their 20s, so these are not the shows that they were watching when they were young, but I would imagine some of you with young kids are very familiar with this. Christmas specials are currently not considered child-directed by the current definition, but with our recommendations, a number of those would be picked up. Talk a little bit about brand advertising and marketing now. Current industry practices basically say that if the brand is, the current industry practice is that the only products that meet certain nutrition criteria are allowed to be in advertising, but there is no threshold in terms of the amount of that ad itself that can also focus on a brand. So if you have Lunchables or kids meals or something like that, while oftentimes you will see the healthier version within that product line or brand being viewed on the television, oftentimes it's not necessarily the focus. It doesn't take up the majority of time that that ad airs. And oftentimes the message that kids walk away with is the brand. It's the overarching umbrella brand and not necessarily the food or beverage that might meet nutrition criteria. So the expert panel felt strongly that if a brand is going to be the focus of the ad and not the product, even if the product meets nutrition criteria, that all products within a brand should meet the standards. And there are many efforts aimed to increase kids' knowledge and preference for a particular brand. Companies know this, they do it well. If the focus of the ad is on a healthy item, a healthy meal within a line of kids' meal, and it clearly is the focus of the ad, and it's shown predominantly, and it is the focus, and it is discussed, and it is talked about, and it is really clear that the emphasis is going to be on the healthier line or the healthier item, then that would be appropriate. But otherwise, if the focus is much more on the brand than it is on the individual product, then that would not be appropriate. So here's an example of why the expert panel felt really strongly about the brand versus the product discussion. Oftentimes what you see in an advertisement might be the healthier version or the meal that meets certain criteria, and I have to say we are pleased with Wendy's announcement to ensure that when you walk in there you won't see sugary beverages on the menu board, but oftentimes what you do get, or what is part of the promotion, is going to be the unhealthier options. And this is the same with Burger King. What you see is in the ad, while you see the milk and there may be some showing of some of the healthier items, the brand is pretty front and center. And oftentimes when you walk into the restaurant, what you're going to see, on the other hand, are not the healthier options. You're going to see the sugary beverages. Burger King is one of the fast food chains that hasn't yet decided to take the sugary drinks off the menu board. We hope they do. But so that's why the importance of brand and product really came into play. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Ariane Corbett, who's going to run you through the remainder of the slides, and then we'll turn it over to Margot. Ariane?
Thanks so much, Tracy. So I'm going to take it over from media platforms and go through the rest of the recommendations. And so when we look at the different media platforms covered by self-regulation, the list really does look relatively comprehensive. If you look on the left there, the current framework for industry practice divides media into a number of different buckets: measured media like TV, radio, and print, and online formats like company-owned websites and advert games, third-party websites, mobile media, etc. Our expert panel reviewed the different categories and decided we need to change those buckets to ensure that all media kids see and use is covered and that nothing really falls through the cracks. So one of our big changes was to digital media. The use, as you all know, the use of digital media is growing and becoming more sophisticated, so we really felt we needed to kind of change that a little bit to make sure that all digital marketing on all digital devices was covered. So we put together a comprehensive list of devices, including mobile devices like cell phones, smartphones, and tablets, and all computers, laptops, game consoles, things like that. We also developed broader coverage for digital marketing in general so that we cover all websites as individual items, emails, text. And we covered some new things that aren't currently covered in self-regulation, like social media or ads that you receive based on your location. The panel also looked at the other media platforms and decided they wanted to more broadly cover movies, to not include just DVDs, but digital downloads like Hulu Plus and movies shown in movie theaters, which are currently exempt. The other big difference is the way we determine when these media platforms are child-directed. The 25% child audience threshold that Tracy mentioned earlier is a big piece of it, but we also developed better definitions for the qualitative aspects of marketing that make it appealing to kids. We'll discuss those in my later slides, but we basically took these two pieces and applied them over all the platforms. We know that the current industry definitions fail to cover the majority of ads kids see on TV and online, but our broader definitions of media, a reduced child audience threshold, and the more comprehensive look at the features of the marketing that make them appealing to kids, we felt would capture the majority of food and beverage ads seen by kids without significantly impacting ads targeted to adults. I'm sorry, I don't see the thing to advance. So my next slide here is going to be it's Coca-Cola's website, ah.com, and it's the website that they describe as targeted towards teens. So it's ahh.com, and this website is basically made up of over 60 different individual unique websites, and they're all advert games based on the A and the H of their ah campaign. So this one that I found particularly appealed to me because I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old little girls, and so while Coca-Cola says that this is a teen-targeted website, I can tell you most certainly that cupcakes and unicorns would appeal to my little children. This game particularly is like a little whack-a-mole game with unicorns, pink sprinkles, all kinds of fun things. And I think we'd all agree that this would be child appealing. Another area that the panel examined closely was the different marketing strategies and techniques that companies use to target kids. Current industry standards cover a narrow list of marketing approaches. Product placement is not allowed, and licensed characters, celebrities, and movie tie-ins can only be used to advertise foods that meet nutrition criteria under current industry standards. Under our recommendations, any marketing using strategies or techniques or with qualitative characteristics especially appealing to children may be considered child-directed. And we basically said that if the overall impression of that marketing is determined to be directed towards kids, then the food and beverages promoted through the marketing need to meet nutrition criteria. So we came up with a long list. We defined the different strategies and techniques, and there were a couple big differences that I wanted to go into a little bit more detail for the webinar. And we'll discuss the qualitative characteristics in a moment. But overall, we were looking for a way to cover clearly child-directed marketing. You know it, you see it. We were looking for a way to describe it and define it. So, one of our big differences is how we cover characters. As I mentioned, industry covers licensed characters. However, characters that are owned by companies or brand mascots are exempt from self-regulation standards. So they only consider character licensing to be child-directed advertising. That's using another company's character to advertise a food or beverage product. Under our recommendations, the use of any characters appealing to kids could make an ad child-directed. On my next slide, I have a couple examples. So here on the left, we have a box of cereal with a licensed character, SpongeBob SquarePants. On the right, we have a box of cereal with a company-owned character or brand mascot, Tony the Tiger. There isn't really much difference between the two. However, Tony the Tiger is completely exempt and fair game to put on products and to advertise to kids. In the middle, you'll see my 3-year-old Layla. She's holding a box of cereal with her favorite licensed character on the front. I can tell you that she doesn't care who owns that character, whether it's a third-party company or the cereal manufacturer. She just wants Dora on her cereal. She can't differentiate who owns the character, and neither should companies. Another area that the panel felt really strongly about was including toys and premiums. Giving a toy away with a product or meal automatically makes that marketing child-directed, meaning toys should only be given away with foods that meet nutrition criteria. And now to qualitative characteristics. When we discussed this topic as a panel, we kept coming back to the principle that you know it when you see it. If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. And any of our panelists on the call or on the webinar right now, I'm sure, are laughing because we said that a million times. That's how qualitative characteristics feel. It's the content of the marketing that makes them appealing to kids. The animation, the food that sings and talks, the characters, the games, the celebrities popular with kids, the sounds, the voices, the child-appealing packages and products, colored fish crackers, green ketchup, chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs. Our recommendations contain a very comprehensive list to help describe these features in words and explain their kid appeal. Our next couple of recommendations were intended to close some of the loopholes in existing self-regulatory practices. One is child-oriented settings. These are settings like out-of-school time programs, early care education settings, and other places that kids frequent. Could be rec centers, children's museums, parks, zoos, children's sports leagues. Because these places are designed for kids, they should be free of unhealthy food marketing. Now, I'm going to talk about my kids because I think I'm in an age where I see this all the time, and this project has really helped open my eyes as a parent. But I was just at the zoo yesterday, and we're looking at the penguins, and just across from the live penguin exhibit is a giant inflatable penguin character holding an ice cream cone next to the ice cream cart at the zoo, begging my kids to beg me to buy them ice cream. And this happens all over the place, and I'll show you some examples in the next slide. But our set of recommendations is aimed at helping people see this as marketing to kids and helping parents and kids by ensuring that this type of marketing in kid-oriented settings is only for healthy foods. So here we have a couple more examples in addition to my penguin. On the left, there's a bomb pop tent at the National Little League World Series game. So any kid lucky enough to go to the National Little League World Series also comes home with great bomb pop products. Those are the popsicles, the red, white, and blue popsicles, merchandise, and just a warm, fuzzy feeling about bomb pops. On the top right, I've got the entrance to the Hershey Amusement Park, which is basically an entire amusement park built around chocolate candy. And then on the bottom, we have the McDonald's that you might find at the Philadelphia Children's Museum, where kids can play in the McDonald's as if they're serving or eating McDonald's. And where do you think they probably want to eat dinner on their way home from the Children's Museum? So schools are the next loophole that we aim to close, and the panel spent a significant amount of time on this section. The current self-regulatory definition for school marketing only applies to elementary schools and narrowly defines the marketing happening there. Schools are a place to teach kids consistent messages about healthy eating. USDA has recently undertaken the huge task of updating regulations to strengthen nutrition standards for meals and snacks. They also issued a proposed rule which would limit marketing only to those foods and beverages allowed under the new guidelines. Our panel chose to support USDA's efforts and crafted their recommendations to complement those proposed regulations. So in that light, our recommendations cover all schools, preschool, elementary, middle, and high school. And they cover all marketing on any property or facility owned or leased by a school district, including school buildings, athletic fields and facilities, and school buses. And they would apply to things like vending machine fronts, food display carts, branded fundraisers, and corporate incentive programs. And the final and probably the most gaping hole is retail marketing. Currently, point-of-sale materials, packaging, and the use of company-owned characters, as we discussed before, are all exempt. Anyone who's taken a toddler down the cereal aisle knows kids are being marketed to with every package they see. And here's my last little story about Layla. So, and I probably could come up with a story for every single one of these, and I did come up with a few. But just this weekend, I'm taking Layla to the grocery store with me, and she sees this package of Fruit Crisps with Mickey Mouse on the front. And everything in her world stopped. Mommy, stop, go back, go back, go back, go back. I mean, she would not let me go until I turned around and figured out what it was on the aisle that she wanted to see. And so I've bought this product for my kids before. They're Fruit Crisps. It's dehydrated fruit with no extra ingredients. They're expensive, but they're, a decent snack. And so that probably doesn't happen very often that I pull the product off the shelf and give it to her, but I did this time. So I give it to her. It's in her hands. She's thrilled. And she looks down at the package and looks up at me and says, "Mommy, what is this?" And honestly, she had no idea what was in that package. After all the fuss she made, I thought this was such a clear illustration of marketing in the retail environment. There could have been dog food inside that bag, and she would have wanted it more than anything in the world because Mickey Mouse was on the front. Well, our recommendations aim to close this gap. We cover all packaging, labeling, design, characters, contests, games, premiums, as well as in-store advertising and displays. And this could be things like table tents, tray liners, checkout aisles, end caps in stores. And under our recommendations, marketing in the retail environment that's especially appealing should only be for foods that meet nutrition criteria. And I'm going to leave you with some photos of the Wild West of retail marketing, some in-store displays, some product packaging, all designed to get kids to ask their parents to buy these products. So that's a brief rundown of our recommendations. There is a lot more information in the documents, but we wanted to give you the highlights. And I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy to see if there's anything she'd like to add before we jump over to Margot and talk about policy implications.
No, thanks, Ariane. That was great, and we can't wait to meet Layla. I think, actually, in the interest of time, Margot, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you to talk a little bit about advocacy efforts as well as the impact of food marketing right now. Go ahead, Margot.
Great. Well, let's see if I have now control of the slides. I do. I have the mouse, but I don't see the advance. Oh, all right. There we go. All right. So food marketing to kids has a rather long and quite challenging history. Congress and the food, toy, and entertainment industries pushed back on addressing food marketing to children through government regulations in the late 70s and early 80s. Some of you have probably heard about the KidVid controversy. And for those of you who are more familiar with recent history, you'll know that starting in 2009, we took the very modest approach of having Congress ask a few government agencies to work together to develop model voluntary guidelines for food marketing to children through the Interagency Working Group on Food Marketing to Kids. But food and entertainment companies pushed back even on that rather modest and completely voluntary approach. So given the politics on this issue, we've had to rely primarily on self-regulation to address food marketing to kids. Those efforts were stepped up significantly since 2006 when companies joined together to form the Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative, a program of the Council of Better Business Bureaus. And so far, 18 food companies have pledged to scale back on their marketing of unhealthy foods to kids through CFBAI. So the big question is, how is it working? You know, some think self-regulation can never work, and others say, especially the food companies, that self-regulation is working perfectly. Actually, it's somewhere in between. A bunch of studies show the same thing. There's been some progress in reducing unhealthy food marketing to kids, which gives me hope. But unfortunately, that progress has been rather modest and is not to the point where it needs to be, given the high rates of childhood obesity and kids' unhealthy diets. This is an example of one study that CFPI did looking at Nickelodeon advertising, which is the most popular children's television station. And we looked from before self-regulation was in effect in 2005 to after. The last time we did this was in 2012. And what we found is that the percent of the food ads that are for unhealthy food decreased from about 90% of food ads to 70%. So it's great to see a decline, but still pretty discouraging that 70% of the food ads aired during children's television programming continue to promote unhealthy options. If you look on the right at the actual number of unhealthy food ads, you see much more progress because the total number of food ads has gone down. So the total number of unhealthy food ads in our sample decreased over time by about 60%, which is more encouraging. One of the reasons why we haven't seen the complete elimination of unhealthy food marketing to kids, and one of the key weaknesses of self-regulation, is that 2/3 of the companies that market to children don't address food marketing at all or address it very poorly. Food and beverage manufacturers are doing the most. 2/3 of them have marketing policies compared to just about 1/4 of restaurants and about 1/4 of entertainment companies. The second major weakness of the current self-regulatory approach to food marketing to kids is that company nutrition standards are too weak and still allow for marketing of unhealthy foods. A few companies have agreed not to market any of their products to children under 12, but more often companies follow nutrition standards that limit the amounts of calories, fat, salt, and sugars in the foods they market. It used to be that each company had its own set of nutrition standards, but in July of 2011, the CFBAI companies together adopted a common set of nutrition standards that went into effect in January 2014. That's a positive step. Having a single set of nutrition standards is easier to understand and to monitor, and overall, the CFBAI standards are stronger than what the individual companies used to have. But still, the new standards are too weak. Under the new and improved nutrition criteria of CFBAI, foods like Cocoa Puffs and Cookie Crisp cereal, SpaghettiOs, and many sugary popsicles are still considered to be healthy foods that companies say are appropriate to market to children. The third key weakness of self-regulation is that companies don't cover all of their marketing to kids. And this is what the new HER recommendations for responsible food marketing to children address, and what Tracy and Ariane have covered so well. So as you heard, most food company marketing policies cover advertising on television, radio, magazines, the company's own websites, and ads on third-party websites, cell phone, viral marketing, and ads on DVDs. So they cover some key types of marketing. They also cover elementary schools. But unfortunately, what's covered in schools is chock full of loopholes, as Ariane described. The CFBAI school policies don't cover display cases for food and beverages in cafeterias or the fronts of vending machines. It doesn't cover sponsorships and branded fundraisers and a number of other approaches. And importantly, most company policies and the CFBAI don't cover marketing in middle and high schools. So as Ariane mentioned, USDA has made a proposal that would help to fill some of these gaps. They would, those regulations, once they're finalized, will mean that school districts need to update their school wellness policies around nutrition and physical activity and include a policy to limit unhealthy food marketing in schools. Many states and localities are also adopting policies to limit unhealthy food marketing in schools through other means. Those policies can be adopted through state legislation, through regulation, through a state board of education policy, through a local board, school board policy, or school wellness policies. And these HER marketing definitions provide a good model for how to define what should be considered marketing in schools, going beyond what most companies are covering now. NPLAN, a project of ChangeLab Solutions, has a terrific model policy And the Center for Science in the Public Interest has backgrounders and other materials for anyone who's interested in limiting unhealthy food marketing in schools. We're also available to provide technical assistance and support for school marketing policies. And food marketing in schools is a policy priority of Voices for Healthy Kids, which is a joint project of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the American Heart Association. They have some grants available to support local and state school marketing policies. So if you're interested in more on school marketing policies, we have some information on foodmarketing.org, the website that we co-host with Berkeley Media Studies Group, and or just contact me and I'd be happy to share more information. We hope that these HER marketing definitions will also help to encourage companies to cover all the other types of marketing that they have and to fill the gaps in the current self-regulatory system. Ariane laid out a number of these. Very few company marketing policies apply to on-package marketing, like toy giveaways, contests, games, and other things you see on packaging. We also need to urge companies to change their definition of kids. As you heard, most all companies in the U.S. only apply their marketing pledges to children 11 and under, yet research shows that 12 to 14-year-olds are exposed to more food and beverage advertising than any other age group. Older kids are still susceptible to the effect of marketing, and they also have more opportunities to choose and buy food when their parents aren't there to guide their food choices. Also, few companies have agreed to limit marketing through toys and premiums, like the toys given away with children's meal at restaurants. In fact, no restaurants are applying their marketing standards to toys and other premiums given away with kids' meals. So one thing we're doing is encouraging companies to change their policies, but we're also looking at policy approaches to address this. Fast food companies target kids with over $700 million worth of marketing each year, and almost half of those marketing expenditures are for the toy giveaways. Food and beverage marketing, including toy giveaways, influences children's food preferences, food choices, their diets, and their health, cultivating a pattern for future consumption and a preference for the foods that are marketed to them. So states and localities have been looking at ways to address unhealthy food marketing to kids, at the big contribution of restaurant foods to children's meals, and at toy marketing in particular. And Santa Clara County and San Francisco, both in California, were the first jurisdictions to pass policies that set nutrition standards for which kids' meals can come with toys. And a number of other states and localities are looking for ways to address the nutritional quality of restaurant children's meals and their marketing. There have been policies introduced in New York City, in New York State, in Maryland, in Hawaii, and others. Nutrition standards for toy giveaways or for children's meals generally are not big government interfering with parental responsibility. Parents have the right to guide their food choices without so much interference from big food companies. Restaurants should really step up and do more to improve the nutritional quality of their offerings and to market only healthy options to kids. Again, NPLAN has great model legislation on addressing restaurant children meals. CSPI has a number of backgrounders, and Voices for Healthy Kids is funding grants in this area. So let me know also if you're interested in more on kids' meal policies. A number of entertainment companies also need to do more to address food marketing to kids. Kubo, which is a small media company, was the first to address unhealthy food marketing in its full range of media, and now Disney is also applying its nutrition standards to not only the use of its licensed characters, but also to food ads on television, radio, and its websites. We and others have been urging Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and other media companies to do the same. They need to be more responsible than they currently are. So I'm just going to end with some thoughts about parents and parental responsibility. I would say probably when I'm talking about food marketing, what I first hear is this knee-jerk reaction to blame parents, to say that it's all parents' fault, companies are just trying to make a buck, and parents should just grow a backbone, say no, and it's all their responsibility. But parents do say no, probably about 9 or 10 times for every time they say yes. The effects of unhealthy food marketing are really much more insidious than that. Food and beverage companies, restaurants, media companies, and other marketers create this ubiquitous chorus of messages that help to shape what children find acceptable to eat. It helps to define the social norms for eating for children. It helps to define what they actually think of as food. So marketing not only affects what kids are willing to eat at home and cause Layla to beg Ariane for different snacks in the grocery store, but they change what the kids think of as food, what they're willing to eat in restaurants, at childcare, in after-school programs, and at schools. It's one of the key reasons why pizza, hamburgers, chicken nuggets, and French fries dominate school lunch menus. Those are the foods that most all kids are familiar with. They're the easiest ones to get lots of kids to eat through the school lunch program. So we need to get beyond this idea that this is solely a matter of parents saying no. The effects of food marketing run much deeper than that. So let me just end by asking for your help. Given the current state of food marketing, there's a lot that needs to be done at the national, state, and local level. And we're working with many organizations through the Food Marketing Work Group and here at the Center for Science in the Public Interest. One easy way to get involved is to take action. We've sent out an action alert today to all the members of the Children's Food and Beverage Advertising Initiative, urging them to take a look at these new marketing definitions and to strengthen their own self-regulatory pledges. You can go on your phone, your tablet, your laptop right now and go to cspinet.org/actnow or just go to our main site and look for that action alert. Also, if your organization, your Department of Health, your School of Public Health is not already involved in the Food Marketing Work Group, shoot me an email, or Jessica, who sent out this webinar notice. And it's a great way to connect with others who are working on food marketing, to keep informed and to support national, state, and local food marketing policies. There are over 200 organizations and experts around the country who are working together to address food marketing. And with that, I will turn it back over to Jessica.
Thank you very much, Margot. So next slide, please. We only have a couple minutes, but there's one question that has come up that I thought I would ask the panel. First of all, many people have commented that they are very thankful for these recommendations and congratulated the panel on its good work. One question that has come up is why they've chosen 14 as the cutoff for child, for the definition of child, rather than 16, which is the definition used in the UK and by the PAHO Expert Consultation on Marketing of Food and Beverages in the Americas, or 18, which is the definition of children who need additional safeguards and protections according to the UN Convention of Rights on the Child.
This is Tracy Fox. I'll take an initial stab at that, and then Ariane and Margot, please feel free to weigh in. And that was a topic of a lot of discussion among the expert panel. We felt strongly that at least with 12 to 14, a couple of practical reasons why that was chosen, and that is because the way that the advertising tracking is set up and that companies use, it's really 12 to 14 or 12 to 17, and companies can really only measure advertising audiences in the groupings that are set up by Nielsen, ComScore, etc. And that 11 to 12 and 13 to 17 is sort of within that bracket, or 12 to 14 and 12 to 17 is within that bracket. If we felt that if we pushed it a little bit higher to be up to 16, it would really be hard for companies to implement the standard, and that actually between the 12 and 14-year-old range, when we crunched the numbers and looked at the amount of ads they were seeing, it really would capture about 70%. And after the age of about 14, media use starts dropping off. So it was a little more difficult to justify raising the age to that higher amount. So those are some of the discussions we had, practical considerations, as well as looking at the numbers and recognizing that we might not get as much really in terms of capturing the number of ads, and we felt that the 12 to 14 really set us up in a good place in terms of really catching the majority of ads without getting into some other difficult discussions about age range and kids' responsibility, etc. So Ariane, anything else, or Margot?
No, I think that's a good age. There's practicality. There's also the issue of, 16 and 18-year-olds watching a lot, pretty much the same television as adults, and so hard to limit advertising to them through a number of different media venues without significantly impacting marketing to adults.
So that's all the time that we have. We have received other questions, and we will address some of those in the briefing that follows for members of the Food Marketing Work Group. You can also ask the expert panel your questions tomorrow during our tweet chat, which is Wednesday, January 21st, tomorrow, 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Follow @CSPI and hashtag marketing to kids on Twitter to participate. I sent a message to the entire webinar of where to get the report, issue brief, and infographic, which is a bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/marketing, the number 2, kids. And if you go to that webpage, which is on the HER website, in the right-hand corner you can read the report, click on the link to read the report, and if you scroll down you'll also see those other resources that I mentioned, the infographic and an issue brief. So we thank the panelists today for their time and the other panelists who may be listening into this webinar. And for those of you who are members of the Food Marketing Work Group, we'll transition now to a briefing by phone. Thank you everyone for attending the webinar.